What's up, everyone? My name is Hank Washington. I am a designer and illustrator here in Birmingham, Alabama. I currently work at a social media agency where I am the art director, and my role here is basically I help lead a team of creatives, and that includes videographers, illustrators, designers, pretty much the whole creative field to produce content for our clients' social media platforms. So the videos, the graphics, the animations that you see, I help lead a team that creates those. I also own Hank Design Studios, which is a design studio that helps brands develop an identity, and that includes things like logo design, to branding their basically their whole company and giving them a face to help them compete in the marketplace, whether they're a brand or a service or a product. We basically give them a sense of personality when it comes to getting their message across to their audience. I got interested in this career path because it was in that weird space between high school and college where you're trying to really figure out what it is you really want to do. I wasn't intending on going to college. I was really trying to literally just get into workforce and just make some money. But my brother was a really big creative in our family. He used to always illustrate. He was a big music head. He DJ'd a lot. And being the annoying little brother that I always kind of peeped in when he was working on his stuff, and I used to always see him draw, and it kind of got me intrigued into doing it. So when I kind of got in this space where I decided to go to school, I was trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do. So I decided to pursue art and, just in general. And then when I learned that graphic design was kind of that space where solving problems and art collided, I just knew this kind of was the space. And it was challenging, kind of like learning the skills and then figuring out how to apply it in the real world. But the fact that I can wake up and be creative to help people is, it paid off. It paid off. But what I learned at what school was the right decision is because of the people that I met there. I was able to meet a lot of people who didn't do the same thing that I did, but they thought in a different way that ultimately helped me. It's kind of how I got started here. I met Keith, who is the founder of Socially In, at Mississippi State, where I ended up interning and then ultimately staying to growing where we are now. And I know I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I didn't go to school. But as far as with design and things like that, I learned a lot of the principles, but more of the business aspect of how to really use it to your advantage. That was what benefited me from going to school.
Right.
Making relationships in college is super important, but I think it's really important to understand you have to be genuine when you're making these type of relationships. Right now, it's very hard to go far if you only making relationships just to get something out of it. If you really go in with the intention to help someone or really understand someone's story and what they're trying to do, and try to play a part in that, it actually goes a long way. Even if, because I'm a big believer of good karma. I'd rather do the right thing even when no one's paying attention, because I know that it ultimately returns. But if you go in there with that kind of headspace and really try to help people out using whatever it is that if you are an artist or if you are, or you just have knowledge in a certain area, if you just share that with them and see how it can help them, that typically turns around into your favor, whether they know someone that may need your services or they can put you in a position to where you can actually really benefit just from a simple action of, hey, let me help you out for a little bit,
Yeah. Or even like you, where you met other people that you collaborated with and formed a business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of it wasn't financial transactions. Every job I did didn't require a dollar figure. It was just hey, I just want you to remember me when an opportunity comes up. So let me take care of you.
Right.
But that over time has been huge as far as getting started into the business world. I still have people that I've talked to years ago that turn around and say, hey, thought about you. I think this is a great opportunity for you. So relationships are huge. Just be a nice person, and to people, it pays off. So far as what I've been doing lately, what you see on my social, that's kind of very fresh. When I really started getting into illustration, I try to mimic the styles of the people that I admire, just to kind of learn that principle, seeing okay, how do they make this type of decision? What's the color palette looks like? What textures that they use? And kind of replicating that over and over again, I started to learn kind of how to make my own decisions using that platform. But as far as like getting the ideas, I try to use as much of my surroundings as inspiration. Usually when I get asked these questions, I usually tell people like, if you want to find ideas, try to be present and do nothing. And it sounds weird, but it's one of those things that, you know, if you let, life already has enough ideas. It's just sometimes we get so caught up in trying to find the perfect one that the good ones end up just passing us by. So a lot of my influences, like from music to family, and even some of the conversations that I have with people, it always ends up sparking an idea that I just keep a note of, and then I just try to interpret it. Like, what this conversation, can this look like, you know, in the illustration piece, or how can I take the song that I heard this morning and make an animation around it? How does it make me feel? But I think it's a good way to like release sort of like express yourself in a sense. And then kind of once you get the hang of it, you can actually use it as something that can help someone, which ultimately you can end up turning it into a business, you know? So, but yeah, that's usually kind of my process. I try to live as present as possible, and then I keep a journal. Even if you have like a phone, like in your notes section, it's like it should be beneficial. And anything that pops in my head, I just write it down. And then when I'm ready to go in and create something, versus me thinking, okay, what I'm gonna make, I'm just referring to that list. Okay, what can I come up with? The interview that I had today, what can that look like? Or what I ate for lunch, what can I drop of that? And then, you know, it's just something to get the ideas out there. Because once you get in the flow, it'll start making sense, and you'll be able to come up with ideas just like that.
Right.
So kind of getting my business off the ground, it was definitely not a smooth transition. Like I said, when I first started with the agency that I'm with now, I was just kind of more of just an order taker. You know, I just did what I was asked to do. But I was lucky enough to make relationships with people who taught me the business aspects of everything. Like, how can you think about clients? How do you think about finance? And from there, it was a little bit uncomfortable because I'm usually just out, like, I just want to draw. Like, I don't want to, you know, think about all that. But once you learn that, and you don't necessarily have to be an expert at it, but once you learn it, you start to really learn how to make better decisions for yourself, and ultimately better decisions for the people that you work with or work for. But that transition was a little bit rocky, just kind of like getting out of, you know, just coming in, doing the same thing versus like you just learning, like when you're not necessarily making, but you're ultimately just learning and, you know, doing trial and error stuff. And over time, it started to make more sense. I started to learn not to just take on any and every project. Ultimately, try to figure out how can I take, if I do take this on, how can it be beneficial in the long run? How can I look at financially, what does that look like for me? Is it profitable? Is it not profitable? And over time, you start to learn how to really start investing more into your business, and you start to see it come to life. So that was kind of the big thing for me, just like taking a step back versus just only making, and really learning the business aspect from just the creative aspect, which is a little uncomfortable for a lot of artists, but it's when you learn both of them, it's only sky's the limit from there. Some notable names that I work with entertainer Marlon Wayans. I had an opportunity to kind of work on some of his personal branding projects. I work with brands like TGI Fridays, Dick's Sporting Goods, the Winter Olympics. We had an opportunity to work on some social content for that. And then I work with some smaller brands, some of them that are kind of close to my heart. One of them being True Beard, which is a beard product. I had the opportunity to brand and develop that. Yeah, so that's kind of, I work with a lot of different names, so it's been a fun journey.
That's great.
I mean, just reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or just looking for a little bit of advice. I'm always available. Just reach out whenever you feel like it.